Glad to have you join us on the program. I am Folashade Ogurinde. For the fourth year in a row, Nigeria has followed through with its January to December budget cycle. But that's the only consistent path, as the yearly budget has seen a significant increase year after year. For the 2023 fiscal year, President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law the appropriation bill with a total aggregate expenditure of 21.83 trillion naira. Buhari explained that the bill has an increase of 1.32 trillion naira over the initial executive proposal for a total expenditure of 20.51 trillion naira. So what does this 2023 Appropriation Act mean for the Nigerian economy? Paul Alaje, economic expert, joins me now for more insight. Well, as always, thank you very much for joining us. Now, the president has finally given his assent to the 2023 appropriation bill with a total aggregate expenditure of 21.83 trillion naira. Now, recall that this is, of course, an increase of 1.32 trillion naira over the initial executive proposal for a total expenditure of 20.51 trillion naira. So what do you make of this?
So I've seen that the President Buhari and his administration have passed the last budget, which is going to be under his supervision. It's a bit less than $50 billion, over 21 trillion naira. Government have said it wants to spend above 70% of this budget on recurrent expenditure. Is expecting significant part of this budget to be on recurrent, both debt service and also non-debt recurrent. And government is expecting that significant part of the spending will come from borrowings, 6.655 for loans, for debt service. Significant proportion is coming on loans. So I've seen what the president wrote. Significant amount is also coming from revenue. Government is hoping to generate more from crude oil and to generate the rest from non-oil sector. At best, with what the president has passed yesterday, I strongly believe that budget is not achievable. I believe that the budget is not realistic, and I also believe that the budget, in terms of revenue target, is what I said is not achievable. There are some good things about the budget, because the issues government had with ASU that made ASU to stay at home for nearly 7 months or more should be laid to rest, because ASU interests have been carefully taken care of in the 2023 budget. Eventually, the president have signed it. I've seen some infrastructure that government have done. For instance, Lagos-Ibadan, which I could say that Apple used the road about 4 or 5 times, that road is near completion. Just a few portions that is not done. And I've also seen on television the second Niger bridge that has been constructed by the administration. I would say kudos to them. I've also been to some northern part of Nigeria, and I've seen what government have done in terms of infrastructure. I would say kudos to them. So for me, I've seen the positives of this budget, and I've also seen the negatives. I tell you another negatives I've seen in the budget. For the first time in recent history, we are going to spend more on debt service than capital expenditure. What does that mean? Less than 6 trillion naira is what is going on capital according to the budget. 6.55, that's more than 6 trillion naira we go on debt service, not to pay back debt. So these are issues that we need to, that has been observed in the 2023 budget just presented. I'll just signed, I beg your pardon, by President Buhari.
In the 2023 budget, federal government has estimated revenue of 10.49 trillion naira. Looking at some of the current economic realities and the current deficit, how realistic is this?
The truth is that the 2023 budget is not realistic in terms of revenue target, and is a budget that may repress the people. And I tell you, government is looking at generating nearly less than 11 trillion naira of over 21 trillion. Approximately 50% of the budget is government is hoping will be willing to finance, and that by next year will be, by this year rather, it will be borrowing nearly 50% of the remainder from different markets, either through internal or external borrowing. And internal borrowing has implication. What government is saying is that between 2023 and 2024, Nigeria should be ready for higher unemployment, Nigeria should be ready for higher inflation, Nigeria should be ready even for crowding out investment because of the volume or quantum of borrowing that government will engage in. Economy is interrelated. You cannot separate public sector from private sector completely. That said, on the other hand, government hopes to generate over 10 trillion naira. That has never happened before. I don't know what government will do that will make us generate 10 trillion naira in 2023. But if you ask me, we never met our revenue target 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2020, 2021, not even last year have we met our revenue target. So what are we going to do differently that will make us earn suddenly nearly 11 trillion naira? The truth is that it's not realistic, it's not visible. And I don't think we're going to do this based on the reality of now, except and unless later in the year we start seeing some magic or the new president that will come to the fore, start bringing some innovative idea. But if we judge it by what we are seeing today, yes, the truth remains that it's not realistic.
In aggregate, the oil sector is estimated to bring in 22% of total revenue in the 2023 budget, with the non-oil sector estimated to perform better.
We need revenue from all sectors, whether oil or non-oil. As a matter of fact, what we have seen in 2016 and 17 and some part of 18 is that oil sector revenue went down, especially in 16 and 17, then 2020. Then you saw a minute and insignificant growth in non-oil sector. And we say, oh, now we are now going to, non-oil sector is now the sector that is giving. Most of the revenue projection failures came from both non-oil sector and oil sector. So the two are very important. For me, we should look for how to generate more in oil and even more in non-oil sector. We will not say because we want to diversify away from oil for government revenue this time that we should look more into only non-oil sector. For God's sake, you journalists reveal to us the quantum of thefts, the quantum of national robbery, the quantum of fraud that was committed on our pipelines in Niger Delta. You journalists showed Nigeria. And it became an indictment of some sort on those that are leading us, that under their watch, significant proportion of our oil was stolen. Honestly, it's still a big worry. Two, for non-oil sector, I have said time and again that the Nigerian government at the federal stands a chance of realizing over 20 trillion naira. And for states put together, an FCT, they stand a chance of realizing over 40 trillion naira in revenue from non-oil sector. But when will authority be ready to earn what belongs to them? It's a question that is still begging for answer.
According to the federal government, the overall 2023 budget deficit is estimated at 11.34 trillion naira, which will be financed by domestic, foreign and other sources. How worried should we be considering the current public debt of 44.06 trillion naira?
So debt is a major issue for us. Debt is one of the reasons why we are having increased inflation. Government continue to borrow money, both from local markets and international markets. This has implication on the quality of money we have. This is one of the reasons why we need to continue to devalue. Many economists have not seen the linkage between why devaluation will happen, and also with this government endless borrowings without finding how to generate revenue or infrastructure to defend the quantum of what has been done, what has been borrowed. I tell you the truth, this has negative implication, is one of the reasons, not the only reason anyways, why the value of naira continue to dwindle, and that's that dwindling value of naira, the implication on inflation. So borrowing from both internal and external, I tell you what it could do is to repress our economy. Now the question is, on what are we borrowing? Of over 10 trillion naira deficits, maybe 11 trillion naira deficits that we have, 3 trillion plus will be spent on subsidy. 3 trillion plus. If you look at what we'll be using to spend on recurrent, it's even more worrisome. Let me say this. Half of the borrowing before, in 2016-17, what we heard is that we are borrowing our way to spend the money on infrastructure. What do you make of borrowing between 10 to 11 trillion naira and you are going to spend only half, less than 6 trillion naira, on capital expenditure, which will not fit spent fully and completely. But all the money is going to recurrent will be fully spent. So it's a huge issue, it's a huge concern, and I hope that authorities, even though it has been passed to law, but we start considering for subsequent budget, and I'm speaking to the next president and next set of governors to please reconsider the health of this economy as it continues to suffer from policy somersault time and again.
Speaking of expenditure now, recall that the federal government, through the finance minister, promised to reduce expenditure, but we've not seen any real commitment of the federal government in that regard. How much of an impact will this have on the economy?
Well, a lot of impact. Expenditure, spending, especially those that are recurrent, is having a lot of negative impact. If you ask me, we have expenditure of over 21 trillion. Over 6 trillion of this expenditure, over 6.5 trillion of this expenditure will go into repayment, not repayment, into service of debts. That's what you are looking for. You are looking for over 6 trillion of 21 trillion just to spend on service. We have 5.5 trillion, 5.9 trillion, which is not even enough, approximately 6 trillion going into capital expenditure. Then you have the rest, less than 10 trillion. Part of this less than 10 trillion will go into salary payments, but significant quantum, the important part of this money will go into government functionaries. At least 30% of the remainder will go into government functionaries. Maybe I should even say more. So when we say we should reduce expenditure, let's classify it. If subsidy was removed at about 3 trillion and we are not servicing debt, that is half of the budget. So if you are looking for what to reduce in terms of expenditure, subsidy is removed, and this subsidy is only for 6 months, by the way, over 3 trillion. Then you are not servicing debt. If you pay your debt back, you have 10 or above 10 trillion naira saved. Then you can convert those into capital expenditure. You are going to see sporadic growth. And that's why when we told people that we should stop devaluing, we should stop borrowing and look for alternative for revenue generation, they think what we're saying may really not be the case for now. But I wonder, if we spend 20 years to rehearse madness, exactly when are we going to practice it?
Paul Alaje, economic expert, thank you very much for your time and your contribution. Well, we'll take a break here, but Money Matters returns shortly. To stay with us. Welcome back. Nigeria's government has concluded plans to auction 7 deep offshore oil and gas blocks for the first time in 15 years off the city of Lagos. This is coming at a time the Nigerian government is trying to ramp up crude oil production and tackle the rising cases of oil theft and pipeline vandalism, especially in the Niger Delta region of the country. According to the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Binga Komolafe, the decision to auction the deep offshore asset is coming months after the NUPRC concluded the sales and allocation of 57 marginal fields, basically for indigenous players, after a long process to help improve the country's failing oil production efforts. Apart from marginal fields, Nigeria last conducted bidding for 45 oil blocks in 2007. The deep water offshore crude oil production, which is dominated by international oil companies, which have accounted for about 35% of oil output in the country. To give more insight, oil and gas expert Bala Zakar joins me now. Thank you very much for giving us your time. What do you make of federal government's decision to auction deep offshore oil and gas blocks?
Whatever the Nigerian government will do, or whatever steps she needs to take to make sure Nigeria ramps up production, is going to be commendable. I'm saying this because this time where energy crisis is an issue globally, nearly all oil and gas producing nations are doing fine. They are doing excellently well. It's only Nigeria that is not doing well. So regardless of the concession we're talking about, whether you're talking about onshore, shallow waters, or deep offshore, whatever steps that will be taken to make sure we bring production on stream should be taken. Because as I speak to you today, and I said that, quote me, in Nigeria today, we do not have up to 15 active drilling rigs. And if you don't have enough active rigs, there is no way you will be able to drill wells, whether you're talking about exploration wells or development wells. And if you cannot drill wells, you cannot produce. And if you cannot produce, you will not be able to meet up with your OPEC quota or your internal country quota to make sure you take care of your internal budget and budget deficit.
Now, do you see this strategy achieving the goal of revamping Nigeria's oil and gas production output?
Once, marginal fields are given out and we have active players and serious players, one way or the other, they are going to contribute their quota. And if they do that, of course, the total production volume will go up. So what we are saying is this: whenever there is going to be whether licensing or you are going to award blocks, it should be done in national interest. And when doing that, competent people should be sought. First thing has to be competency in terms of technical capabilities. And after that, then you look for financial capabilities. Once you have financial capacity and technical competency, those companies or those bidders or winners are good to go.
Do you not think the problem of insecurity will scare away serious bidders?
One of the reasons why many investors were shying away from Nigeria was because of what I can technically call business climate hostilities. And before now, to be honest, I wasn't personally comfortable with the government of Nigeria, because when some of the oil and gas investors were trying to shy away from the Nigerian oil and gas basins or industry, the government was basically saying it was because they are going green. They wanted to divest into other sources of energy. But some of us who are practitioners in the industry knew that some of the companies were running away because of business climate hostilities. And the principal one was insecurity. And even when you talk about insecurity and you start dissecting it, crude oil and gas theft was one of the principal reasons. Because, it doesn't make sense if you go into an area, you invest so much and you cannot see your product. It was also a major problem, when you have your staff or personnel being attacked and their lives are threatened. But with the recent, recalibration of security strategy by the Nigerian government and the cooperation of the security agencies and some of the private security agencies, in addition to the national security agencies, I think we are beginning to see signs, that are very, very encouraging. And a lot of us believe that some of the oil and gas investors that were shying away from the Nigerian crude oil and gas industry are likely to see the Nigerian oil and gas industry as a very good investment destination or a very good investment haven.
Well, oil and gas expert Bala Zakka, thank you very much for your time on the program. It's a wrap on the program. See you again next time. I am Folashade Ogrinde. Bye for now.